It's been so long since I've made a video like this. This will be fun. So hello there, whoever you are, wherever you are. I hope you're doing alright. Hope the Rona hasn't got the best of you. Now today we're going to be doing a little bit of analysis. Well, hey. Now this video will entail a conversation that was had on CNN. The bashing of completely unbiased news. I'm sure this will be good and fair. Like, I'm sure that Don Lemon will allow Terry Crews, the guest, to speak and voice his opinions and not just criticize him based on things he hasn't actually said and skewer things into a narrative. No. CNN's own Don Lemon wouldn't do that now, would they?
All right, everybody, please listen to this segment because actor and activist Terry Crews facing backlash for tweeting, "We must ensure Black Lives Matter doesn't morph into Black Lives Better."
Yeah, sounds good to me. I mean, you don't actually think that black people are better just because of their melanin count now, do you? That we are superior now?
Here's how he explained it. Are all white people bad? No. Are all black people good? No.
Absolutely correct, you bloody legend Terry Crews. I wonder if Don Lemon actually agrees.
Knowing this reality, I stand on my decision to unite with good people no matter the race, creed, or ideology.
Not so sure about the ideology part. I mean, in regards to the ideology, you have complete control over that. And there are some ideologies that are foul and oppressive.
Given the number of threats against this decision, I also decide to die on this hill.
Good on Terry Crews. He has the confidence in himself to stand up for what he believes in. Imagine if more people did that.
Terry Crews joins me now. Terry, man, you stepped in it.
That sounds an awful lot like, man, you stop following the tribe.
You say that you're willing.
Yeah.
You say you're willing to die on this hill. You've taken a lot of heat for this. Explain what you were thinking and why it's so important that you die on this hill.
I just want to quickly add something for those of you that aren't familiar with tactics used by the mainstream media. You see how he kind of lulls Terry into a sense of security. I mean, like, damn, bro, I've got your back. I want you to explain yourself so you can justify your actions. That's the kind of thing he pulls, and then at the end you can see how his face kind of changes into serious supporter, NPC mode, ready to say the normal rhetoric. Don't worry, you'll see as it goes on, I'm sure.
Well, again, and I wanted to bring up the fact that, there are some very, very, militant type forces in Black Lives Matter.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
What I was issuing was a warning. It's one of those things where I've been a part of different groups, I've been a part of different things, and you see how extremes can go far and can go wild.
I imagine your typical CNN viewer, no offense if you're watching this, would assume that the only people who are too far are the right. Boy, you have no idea of the power of the far left.
And then when you issue a warning, and when a warning is seen as detrimental to the movement, how can you ever have checks and balances? In the 60s and 70s, airplanes went down all the time. And the reason they found out why they did was because the pilots could never be questioned.
Spot on, Terry Crews. I believe their mantra is, if you question the authority, you are stepping out of line and needs to be put back in your place, back into the hive mind, to follow the horde, to follow the tribe, to submit to the mob. This is how authoritarianism works.
And when you have the leaders of the Black Lives Movement who are now talking about, if we don't get our demands, we're going to burn it down.
Violent authoritarianism, hidden under the shroud of oppression. Checkmate.
Other black people who are talking about working with other whites and other races, they're being viewed as sellouts or called Uncle Toms.
Wow, it's almost as if they didn't even care about equality for all people at all. Who would have thought?
You start to understand that you are now, being controlled. You're not being treated as loved. You're actually being controlled. Someone wants to control the narrative.
Yeah, pretty much the guy you're talking to right now.
And I viewed it as a very, very dangerous self-righteousness that was developing that that really viewed themselves as better. It was almost a supremacist move.
Let me jump
where
in.
I
they
can just imagine in his earpiece right now, some executive is screaming in his ear now, "Oh my God, he's exposing us! Damn! Protect the narrative! Eliminate the threat! Subdue! Interject! Manipulate! Control!"
used their Black Lives mattered a lot more than mine.
Okay, so let me jump in here. There's a lot that you said. You think Black Lives Matter is, you said you think it's an extreme movement?
Oh, shut up. You know exactly what he said. I love how he highlights the specific thing that he said, only to take him out of context later. So you believe they're extremist? Oh my God, how could you? Bigot. I can't call you a white nationalist because you're black, so that won't work on you, but I'll just call you an Uncle Tom. Oh wait, you carved that out as well. Oh God, malfunction.
Because it's now part of the...
No, but this is the thing. It's a great mantra. It's a true mantra. Black lives do matter. But when you're talking about an organization, you're talking about the leaders. You're talking about the people who are responsible
Okay,
for
I got
putting
you.
these
I
things
got you. I got
together.
If you really had him, wouldn't you let him finish instead of interrupting?
So let me,
It's
but
two different things.
Cherry, you realize that even during the civil rights movement that Dr. King was seen as extreme. That movement was seen as extreme.
All things are extreme from someone's point of view. What should determine extreme should be objective, not related to subjectivity. What you're doing now, however, is a common manipulative tactic, and that is to bring up a straw man, essentially, which has nothing to do with what you're talking about. Do you know what is different from Martin Luther King's movement and the people using Black Lives Matter as a weapon to push agendas and riot and loot and destroy cities and towns? You know, most of the places where the black community lives and now has to struggle because of this. Places like New York City, Chicago, and Minneapolis. Martin Luther King's movement was performing peaceful protest. You can't say the same here now, can you?
To people who don't want to make change, movements are seen as extreme. You can paint them easily as an extreme when they are not.
The only difference here is that this one is in fact extreme. I mean, let's be honest and do the research. Some of the Black Lives Matter leaders are actually openly coming out in favor of Marxism. Believe it or not, Marxism is a form of extreme. Extremism is heavily rooted in authoritarianism. The more extreme you are, the more far you are, the more authoritarian you are. So, when people call them extreme, usually it's warranted. Sometimes it's not and it's used to slander, but then you can rely on actions of the masses that are following this movement and what their leaders are calling for. And then, wow, you found the truth.
This is very true. But also, when you're talking about MLK, you're talking about Nelson Mandela, and even Malcolm X, they all realized that you had to have a non-racial component to these kind of movements, or there will be resentment. There will be get back. There will be, one of these people will tend to innocent.
I'll add on to what he says here in regards to the racial component of movements. You see, your melanin count has very little effect on you as an individual, especially in an objective sense. So when you focus on only one specific area of effect, essentially, you are then dismissing every other individual who doesn't fall under this one category, who may have gone through exactly the same thing. And then what do you think happens to those individuals? They are left alone to fester, to build up resentment, and then they begin to associate everything bad that has happened with them with the group that has seemed to get everything that they wanted simply because of their, in this case, melanin count. Do you see the predicament that we are in? This is the issue of identitarianism, and I hope to do a video specifically on that in the future.
I don't want to move from one oppressor to the next. And one thing that really
Who's the
me
next
when I look
oppressor?
at-
Who's the next oppressor?
Oh, suddenly you have something to say. Oh, you bloody lemon. Did you just see how Don Lemon just tried to manipulate Terry Crews into making a mistake? Oh, so who's the oppressor? Black Lives Matter? Oh, news just in, Terry Crews hates Black Lives Matter, therefore he hates Black Lives. Uncle Thomas.
When I describe this, when you look in the city of Chicago, there are 9 children who died by gun violence, by black on black gun violence, from June 20th all the way to today. And you're talking about even with the Atlanta child murders, there were 28 kids who died in 2 years. You're talking about a month, and you have 9 black kids, and the Black Lives Matter movement has said nothing.
One thing that did bug me is that he avoided the question. I mean, I would have respected him more if he just openly just said his mind. It seemed like he was just trying to divert. Maybe because Terry knew that Don Lemon was setting him up and didn't want to make any issues. I mean, I get the vibe that Terry Crews is a bit passive in regards to confrontation and doesn't want to start anything. Which, yes, it may be smart to do that, especially with the crowd he's up against right now. But let's be honest, why would he be on there if you're not going to speak your mind and just going to be led into saying what Don Lemon needs to make you say to get his point across, to get his ratings up? Little food for thought. However, I do completely agree with what Terry said after. When those teenagers or kids, as he said, died in Atlanta, or let's go on to what happened with the Chaz, why is Black Lives Matter all of a sudden silent about the black people being killed? They seem to only be focusing on police brutality and not the other injustices being done. This is what he was talking about when he mentioned the narrative being pushed.
About this
What does
kind
that
of
have
thing.
to do with equality, though, Terry?
And what does Black Lives Matter have to do with equality if it's just focusing on black lives?
I don't understand what that has to do with equality, because listen, there's crime. There are people in those communities those people aren't just being nonchalant about gun violence. I lived in Chicago. There are many people who are working in those communities to try to get rid of the gun violence. The gun culture in this country is prevalent, but I don't understand what that has to do with a movement that's for equality for black people.
Wouldn't you rather have equality for all people? I believe that is the definition of an equality, right? If not all lives matter, and you are indeed just focusing on equality for black people, then that sounds very much like supremacy to me. Perhaps you should look into the guy you brought up earlier, Martin Luther King Jr., Don Lemon. I'm sure his comments in the past, especially about content of character and not the colour of skin, will enlighten you.
It's not mutually exclusive that if you care about equality for black people, that somehow you're going to stop random violence or, unfortunately, kids from being shot. It just seems like apples and oranges.
What you just said actually enforces what Terry was saying earlier. Which black lives matter to you?
You know, it's not that way. You know, this is the thing, Don. You know, black people need to hold other black people accountable. I said this the same thing. This is the Black America's version of the Me Too movement. If anything is going to change, we ourselves need to look at our own communities and look at each other and say, this thing cannot go down.
I love you, Terry, but God damn it, I wish you'd actually say something to combat the crap that is coming out of Don Lemon's mouth.
And this is the thing, too. There are a lot of great, great people there who are held hostage, by people who literally are running these neighborhoods with violence and then claiming that Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, like the Chaz. Wait, what? I'm not allowed to say that. The FBI is coming? Well, I'm in the UK, I'll be fine. But they can't get to me. The fuck?
FBI, open up! Ah! When you look at the parents of these little kids who are mentioning, saying, hey man, why aren't they speaking up for me too? And this is what I'm saying. When I look at this whole thing about, you know, it's about who is controlling the narrative. It's got to be all Black Lives Matter.
Oh, stop it, Terry, come on. You know damn well they don't care about all black people. To be honest, I don't even think they care about any black people. Just their agenda.
And what's happened is that because I even challenged it, because I even questioned and warned people.
Okay, Terry, I'm gonna interrupt you because you're exposing us.
Terry,
I became sick. Like if I told you to wear a mask,
but Terry,
they want to kick you out.
You're a high-profile person. You're writing things out there. You know you're going to get backlash. You know people are going to respond to what you're saying on Twitter. So I don't think you should be surprised by that.
But that's not what he's talking about, you pillock. He's talking about the dismissiveness. He's talking about the hypocrisy. He's talking about disingenuous twats like you who are trying to push the narrative and discredit anything valid that comes out of his mouth. And that's literally what you're doing right now. That's what happened to him on Twitter.
I have a skin as tough as an armadillo because of what I do, and I think maybe you should adapt that.
You know what? Hats off to Terry again for actually not just reacting to that emotionally, which is probably what Dunn was trying to do, but Jesus Christ. That was probably the most backhanded comment I've ever heard on the news. Jesus.
But here's what I have to say. The Black Lives Matter movement was started because it was talking about police brutality. If you want an all Black Lives Matter movement that talks about gun violence in communities, including, Black communities, then start that movement with that name.
Yeah, the Black Lives Matter organization that was started 5 years ago definitely tried to do that. I don't know what the hell this movement, quotation marks, is trying to do. But let me just quickly say something now. Didn't you just say that it was about equality earlier? Is it changing now? Did the guy in your earpiece tell you to change the narrative yet again? Oh, I wonder.
But that's not what Black Lives Matter is about. It's not an all-encompassing...
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the attack on the straw man.
So if you're talking about, if someone started a movement that said, cancer matters, and then someone comes in and says, why aren't you talking about HIV? It's not the same thing. We're talking about cancer. So the Black Lives Matter movement is about police brutality and injustice in that manner, not about what's happening in Black neighborhoods. There are people who are working on that issue, and if you want to start that issue, why don't you start it?
By your own logic, then it shouldn't be called Black Lives Matter. It should be called Police Reform Matters. But let me quickly harp on what you've just said, because what you've just said just highlights how disingenuous you really are. According to Don Lemon, Black Lives Matter is about police brutality, even though he linked it to equality not that many minutes ago. But if that was the case, then why on the Black Lives Matter website do they list their campaign goals as 1, to vigorously engage our communities in the electoral process, number 2, educate our constituents about candidates and the issues that impact us most, and 3, promote voter registration among Generation Z and the Black community and our allies? And why underneath campaign focuses is police brutality one of many things listed, such as racial injustice, criminal justice reform, Black immigration, economic injustice, LGBTQIA+ and human rights, environmental conditions, voting rights and suppression, healthcare, government corruption, education, and common sense gun laws. I thought Black Lives Matter was just about police brutality, Don Lemon. Are you disingenuous as up, or are you retarded?
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do, and it just makes me dislike you even more than most people probably do.
But when you look at the organization, police brutality is not the only thing they're talking about.
I know that, but I agree, but that's not what the Black Lives Matter movement is about, Terry.
If you do agree, then what are you talking about when you say that's not what the Black Lives Matter is about? You've literally just said you agree with the fact that he has stated that there are other things that are listed. I have actually shown it on this video, by the way, just in case you haven't noticed, and Terry Crews literally just said exactly the same thing right after. Yet you still have this disingenuous twat, Don Lemon, saying that that's not what it's about. Within the same sentence, this media crony has contradicted himself. What the hell?
Black Lives Matter is about police brutality and about criminal justice. It's not about what happens in communities when it comes to crime, black on black crime, people who live near each other.
What Terry Crews should say is, so, Don Lemon, you are openly saying that Black Lives Matter doesn't care about black lives and their communities. Oh.
Black people kill each other, same as whites. 80-some% of white people are killed by white people. True. Because of proximity.
Very true.
It's the same thing with black people. That happens in every single neighborhood. But that doesn't, again, I'm not saying that's not important that those kids died, but it's a different movement. Again, I'm not saying that's not important that those kids died, but it's a different movement. Kids died, but it's a different movement.
The mainstream media, ladies and gentlemen.
Listen, I understand what you're saying. I totally understand. It is about police brutality. That should never be accepted. Yeah. I am not saying that that's not it, but there's more there. And when I look at if they have more on their agenda, we need to ask them about what else is on that agenda.
All right, Tim. I need to make an excuse why we need to end because you're actually making sense and making me sound stupid. Oh my God.
Other than police brutality. And that's all I'm doing.
I got
Questioning,
you.
warning, watching. And if that bothers you, now that bothers me.
Over.
Because
I'm
if
over,
I
Terry.
can't warn you, we are equal. If we're equal, I should be
I
able
gotta
to
go,
say
Terry.
something truthful as equal.
I gotta go. I gotta go.
Yes, funny that Don Lemon needs to go as soon as Terry Crews actually starts to rebuttal with a very, very sound argument against him. They do not care about black people. Hear it from a black person, seeing as that's the only important thing to these types of people. They are using the slogan Black Lives Matter as a racial shield for their ideology, which seems to be leaning towards socialism and Marxism, and it can't be criticised because if you attack the ideology, by proxy, you are attacking black people. It's sick. It's deceptive. It's disgusting that these people would take the goodwill out of so many people all over the world, only to shove their messed up authoritarian rhetoric into it. Screw you. First of all, if you're one of these people, screw Don Lemon. You are the problem. You cause the divide. You are the racist. You make it so that people like myself have a hard time simply because we don't blindly follow the horde, the mob, to the point where I have to anonymously make a YouTube account to get my point across without having my life ruined. Don Lemon, what you have done to Terry Crews is a prime example of why so many people can't and won't speak up, which reinforces the idea for the people who are, by little fault of their own, sheep and unaware of the fact that there are other people like them that do not agree with this identitarian mess of an ideology. And because they can't see this, they assume that it must be wrong to not think like this because the majority in their eyes are with this ideology. And you know what this leads to? It leads to a massive slap on the face when they realize that there are, in fact, more people who disagree with them and this messed up ideology. One only has to look to the 2019 election in the UK to see the destruction of the Labour Party, who was so confident that they were actually the majority, when in reality, they were wrong. All these people posting the black squares, all these people tweeting Black Lives Matter without doing the research, they are so oblivious to the manipulation being done on them, and it is so sad to see this from the outside. They are unaware at the rapid censorship at anyone who doesn't agree with the narrative, whether it be on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. And it's the reason why I set up a Parler account, because I despise the authoritarian cesspool that is Twitter. So go there and follow me now, because what if I am wrong? Maybe I am the minority. Maybe I'm an Uncle Tom after all, and I am just a bee that lost its connection to the hive and will be purged from the internet, mainly Twitter, and oppressed for his views and values because I'm a white nationalist bigot with a high melanin count. But hey, hindsight is 20/20.